Breaking news, the government has released the document announcing sweeping changes to the asylum system in a bid to make the UK less attractive for illegal migrants. Our chief political correspondent, John Craig, joins me now. John, this has just dropped on the government's website, hasn't it? Just quickly scanning through it, the Prime Minister talking about how the world has changed. It is more volatile and insecure, with increased conflict leading to significant increase in the movement of people across the globe. Our asylum system was not designed to cope with this, he says. Briefly, what's contained in here?
Well, here it is, Jane, 33 pages of it, literally hot off the press. It's still warm. The title is Restoring Order and Control, and basically it sets out all the measures that we've heard from the Home Secretary over the weekend. Those words you've just quoted from the Prime Minister, Jane, are the foreword written by the Prime Minister, and then there's one by the Home Secretary. She talks about an increasingly volatile and more mobile world. Huge numbers of people are on the move. And then it gets into the various chapters. For example, Part 1, reducing arrivals, protection rights, a core protection offer for refugees, shortened leave to remain, we know about, a longer path in settlement, protection, work and study visa route, new requirements on family reunion, reduced right to public funds. The next chapter is asylum support. After that, there's a section on illegal working. And then there's a big section on Part 2, increasing removals, removing failed asylum seekers. Continue the French returns pilot, which has been much criticised, the one-in, one-out scheme. Resuming removals to certain countries, and visa penalties, which we've learned about earlier today. We will act against countries who fail to cooperate with the return of their citizens, including through imposing visa penalties, as that's provided in an Act of Parliament from 2022. This could include suspending the granting of entry clearance for nationals of a country until it takes back its citizens who are in the UK illegally. Those are the main proposals. Now, I can tell you that in the past hour, it's been Home Office questions in the House of Commons, and didn't have to wait very long for a clash between the Home Secretary and a Labour backbencher. Here's the document, by the way, 33 pages of it. Early on in Home Office questions, there was a pretty tense and terse exchange between the Home Secretary and one of the 18 rebel Labour MPs on a Sky News spreadsheet. These are the MPs who have already publicly criticised the Home Secretary's proposals, and early on in Home Office questions we heard this question from one of those MPs, Nadia Whitome.
The Denmark-style policies briefed in the last couple of days are dystopian. It's shameful that a Labour government is ripping up the rights and protections of people who have endured unimaginable trauma. Is this how we'd want to be treated if we were fleeing for our lives? Of course not. So how can we be adopting such obviously cruel policies? Is the Home Secretary proud that the government has sunk to such depths that it's now being praised by Tommy Robinson?
Well, Mr. Speaker, look, I'm disappointed at the nature of the question from my honourable friend. I hope she will look at the detail of the reforms. And what I've said already on these matters is that we have a proper problem that it is our moral duty to fix. Our asylum system is broken. The breaking of that asylum system is causing huge division across our whole country. It is a moral mission for me to resolve that division across our country. I know that the reforms I will be setting out later on today can fix this system, and in doing so can unite what is today a divided country.
So, defiant Home Secretary there in the face of Labour backbench criticism. So who are some of those rebels on our spreadsheet? Well, some of them are the usual suspects, left-wingers like Clive Lewis, who at the weekend called for the Prime Minister to step down. Nadia Whitome, I mentioned, John McDonnell, a veteran Labour left-winger, Belle Ribeiro Addy, Kate Osborne, left-wing MP, and also, for example, Richard Bergen, and Rachel Maskell, who lost the whip over her opposition to the welfare reforms. But significantly, some names on here include new MPs elected only last year. Tony Vaughan, the MP for Folkestone and Hythe down in Kent. Simon Ofer, who is the MP for Stroud. These are MPs who won their seats from the Tories. Kat Eccles-Stowbridge as well. So later this afternoon, we will get the full statement from the Home Secretary. And if the intervention by Nadia Whittome is anything to go by, she's going to face some pretty tough questions from her own Labour backbenchers.
John, thanks ever so much. Well, we'll have more analysis and reaction to this story shortly with the rest of our political team in Westminster, as well as refugee rights advocates. Earlier, I spoke to a former Supreme Court Justice, Lord Sumption, on the Home Secretary's claim that the ECHR has been exploited by asylum seekers.
It's certainly been exploited by people who launch multiple appeals so as to delay the evil moment when they're deported. But there is only quite a small number of cases in which tribunal judges have ruled in favour of asylum seekers' appeals when it was not warranted by the convention, either the case law or the text of the convention itself. There aren't many such cases, but there are some, and they attract a disproportionate amount of press attention.
Well, let's talk now to Sarah Singer, who's a Professor of Refugee Law at the Refugee Law Initiative at the University of London. Good to talk to you today, Sarah. So fundamentally, the government is announcing this raft of proposals because they say it will act as a deterrent to those seeking to come illegally into the UK. Do you think it will act as a deterrent?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And unfortunately, the Home Office's own research has shown that policy changes such as these, making restrictions to access to the labour market, etc., they don't act as a factor primarily when migrants are making decisions about where to migrate and where to move to. Primarily, people are getting their information from their social networks, and it's not being informed by these types of policies. So I don't think it's going to have much of a deterrent effect in practice at all.
One of the proposals is the reassessment of asylum seekers. At the moment, they are reassessed every 5 years. The government's proposing reducing this to sort of halving that to 30 months. Do you think that would work? Does the Home Office have the administrative capacity to carry out these kind of regular checks?
Yeah, well, the administrative burden on the Home Office is going to be immense. And at the moment, it seems like the Home Office is struggling to process in a timely manner those initial assessments of asylum claims. So I think that, having this regular review process is not workable in practice.
The other element of that is a longer path to settlement, as the government are calling it. No indefinite settled status until 20 years in the UK at the moment. That's 5 years. That does seem like an awfully long time. I mean, it's past people's lifetimes often. What impact do you think that will have? Won't that deter people?
Well, as I mentioned, I don't think these types of policies are going to factor into people's initial decisions about where to move. What the effect is going to be in practice, if it's incredibly punitive, people are going to be living in a very a limbo-like situation if these measures come into play. We're having their refugee status reassessed on a regular basis. That will make it difficult for them to probably hold down jobs, to hold down, regular accommodation. And then as they progress through that, you can have children who've spent their whole lives in the UK without a regular status, and then still this question of settlement at the end of it. It seems unnecessarily punitive to me, and it raises questions about the distinction between the treatment of refugees versus other migrants in the UK as well.
So you don't think it's going to act as a deterrent? What about the second section about asylum support and accommodation? The government is suggesting reducing quite a lot of support, revoking a duty to support. If it was less pleasant once you get here as an asylum seeker, do you think that might encourage some asylum seekers to go to other countries, perhaps, instead of their own accord?
I mean, it's possible, but to be honest, conditions are not very pleasant at the moment. The way that asylum seekers are being warehoused on large scale in a number of different centres, including disused military barracks. I believe, I mean, we don't have the full details yet, but I believe the suggestion is to remove the duty to support from people who don't have the means to support themselves, primarily. And given that asylum seekers are mostly barred from working in the UK, it's difficult to understand how many people this would actually affect. I mean, I think it would be much more sensible if resource was put into actually processing people's asylum claims, determining whether they have a valid claim or not, and pursuing deportation of those that don't. At the moment, when people are waiting for months and months and years, they're in this enforced, they're in enforced uh, position of having to rely on the government because they're prohibited from working and they have to rely on this support.
Which, of course, then leads many to working illegally, as we know, especially in the delivery industries. The government is saying that they also want to tackle illegal working, including bringing in digital ID, expanding right to work checks, and also having agreements with delivery companies to strengthen ID verification. If that stops people who are here illegally working in those kind of industries, what impact do you think that would have?
Well, I think it's going to increase the pressure on the government to support people that are in need of support. I mean, we'll see, what the actual measures are that are going to be brought into play. But it seems like a huge administrative burden to put on the Home Office to be enforcing these kind of checks for, relatively limited gain, I would suggest.
Just looking at the second segment that the government has announced today, increasing removals, about removing failed asylum seekers. So exploring enforced returns to countries like Syria, where conditions have changed. Family removals, financial support for voluntary family returns with escalation to enforced removal if refused, and ending indefinite support for families. What do you make of those proposals?
I think that engaging with countries of origin to seek removal of people who aren't in need of protection is a very sensible approach to take. So engaging with countries to readmit their non-nationals is very sensible. But I think that the suggestion that we would be engaging with, the Taliban in Afghanistan or with the Syrian authorities to be returning people to situations where it's not yet considered that it's safe would be very questionable for the UK's human rights record. I mean, Denmark is, ostensibly one of the countries on which these initiatives are being modelled. And in Denmark, what's happened is that they removed the refugee status from large numbers of Syrians. They haven't actually been able to remove them back to Syria. So they're just sitting in these removal centres, living this kind of half-life, and again, putting a huge amount of financial strain on the Denmark authorities. So I'm not sure it's going to be feasible in practice.
OK. Just finally, looking at the final thing, safe and legal routes, an annual cap on arrivals. Not quite sure how the government can implement that if people are coming in illegally. Capped routes, though, for students and skilled refugees. Flexibility for global crises. But we know also the creation of safe routes, the desire of the government to reduce the need for people to come illegally. Do you think if more safe routes were created, it would discourage people from coming across on small boats if they knew they might have to wait in France for 6 months, for example, but that there was a light at the end of the tunnel, that there was a safe and legal way they could get across?
Definitely. Again, I think the creation of safe and legal routes is a very sensible response. Have systems in place so that people can potentially submit asylum applications before they've even made dangerous journeys would be a wonderful route. And in the absence of that, having schemes similar to the Ukraine Homes for Ukraine scheme or the skilled workers route would be, incredibly valuable for the country and for those individuals. People don't want to put their lives at risk making dangerous journeys. So if there are alternatives that are available, then they would be more attractive. The question is how broad are these routes going to be in practice, given the suggestion that, they're going to be capped? What are they going to be capped at? How many people are going to be able to access those?
Professor Sarah Singer, a Professor of Refugee Law at the University of London. Good to get your reaction straight away to this as it just drops. Thank you very much. So that is the government's documentation on changes to the asylum system, which has just dropped on the Home Office's website on gov.uk. Just digesting all the details of that. We're going to be talking to our correspondent Tamara Cohen in a short while, who's been ploughing through it as well while we're carrying out that interview. We'll be coming through to her in the next few minutes. In the meantime, the opposition leader, Keir Starmer, has been talking on it today. Let's take a listen.
I think this is a small step in the right direction. We're going to need a whole series of actions. You know, our borders plan is very, very comprehensive. We just want to ban all asylum claims completely. We need to be out of the ECHR, out of the ECAT. We need a removals force. What we have at the moment isn't going to do that. We need to make sure that we end the immigration tribunals where a lot of bad decisions are made by judges sitting on those tribunals. There is just so much more that needs to be done. But this is a step in the right direction, so we're not going to fight them on that. We're going to help them as much as possible, especially as we know their backbenchers are not supportive.
And do you agree with threatening visa bans on countries that don't cooperate with removals?
100%. That's one of our policies as well, actually. So it's glad to see Labour taking it on. We have said that we need to have returns backed by visa sanctions. That was the second R in our borders policy. The final thing was supporting European countries in order to get them, in a better place as well. We've got to work with other people if we're going to sort this crisis. We're not the only ones who are dealing with it.
And what is your position on the proposed 20-year temporary status for asylum seekers that's being proposed?
Not a good idea. If you arrive in our country illegally, you need to be sent home. If people know that they can get citizenship after arriving here illegally, you're going to encourage more and more people to come here. And at the end of the day, we are in a worse position on illegal immigration because Labour scrapped the Rwanda scheme. That scheme would have meant that if people arrived here illegally, they would have been processed elsewhere. Instead, they're being processed here, and now Shabana Mahmood is talking about giving them citizenship. We don't agree with that bit, but we know that throughout this package that she should be announcing later, there will be some things that we agree with. Steps in the right direction, we will support them in that.
Keir Starmer there. You're watching Sky News Today. Coming up, we'll be getting more reaction to this. Just been announced by the government what it is describing as the most substantial reform of the UK's asylum system in a generation.